What was I thinking when I put my name on the ballot? I've never been to a political meeting before this year. I'm not wealthy. I don't come from money. I'm certainly not a historian, lawyer, or a political scientist. But I was seeing a problem.
But what I kept seeing in Arkansas was the formation of one-sided ballots, where you would just have a set of Republicans that were primarying and other Republicans. And when you have that happen over multiple election cycles, it starts to become a race to the bottom. Full disclosure, I would say that about the other side if it was that way. You need competition. We say that all the time. We know we need competition.
In February of 2022, I attended a meeting at the Baxter County Democrats, and upon learning that for another election cycle we didn't have any candidates, I decided to put my name on the ballot despite being a complete outsider. It's been 15 years since a Democrat ran for this office. That's 15 years of letting individuals like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones brand us into something that is unrecognizable to our neighbors.
For every attack online, every rude comment from either side, I challenge us. You know, a lot of us in this room, I know a lot of you are Democrats because I know you, but I challenge us to put down our sword, to speak to policy, to speak to facts and history. Don't let them drag you down in the ditch when we can stand up here and talk on the road. I ask my fellow Christians to not use religion as a way to divide. Some of us in here are people of faith, and we know legislation can't save you from hell. Law cannot save you from Judgment Day. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love is going to do that. And so I ask that we, all of us, online and especially because we know where we are. We know we're in a red territory. We need to choose our words carefully so that we work in a way that we are breaking down defenses, so that we are giving them the unexpected. They expect attacks. They expect us to behave the way that you guys have all seen the comments on this event, so I don't have to go into that too much. I believe in the separation of church and state, so I want to say that. But I found that the red verses in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John have been a great roadmap for me, personally, on how to live a better life.
I've decided to use my background in marketing and media production to run my own campaign, develop my own platform, and manage my own voice. I've refused the typical PAC donations that poison so much of our politics, and that goes with corporate donations as well. To learn more about the district, I decided to lean into my strengths and produce a video of our tour around north central Arkansas. District 23 consists of a small eastern side of Boone County, all of Baxter and Marion counties, and most of Fulton and Izard County. I wanted to stay true to my love of outdoor tourism and promote the wild spaces we have in the process of running our campaign. We decided to tour the district on mountain bike and even a little bit by canoe. Travel to the farthest corner of District 23 and you'll find yourself in Mammoth Spring, Arkansas, one of the most unique spots in the entire district. Mammoth Spring is home to one of the world's largest springs that runs southward as the Spring River. The area welcomes tourists to its parks, hatchery, shops, and diners on a consistent basis. So you have student groups come in pretty often, I'm guessing?
We do.
Yeah.
We get lots and lots of visitors. I mean, I think last year our number was like 54,000.
54,000? For like 1 year period?
For a year, yeah. Just an alligator display. Some of the staff have named it Eugene.
Okay.
That's a smaller one. We used to have a bigger one in here.
Oh, I see him in there now.
Yeah,
hanging
he's
out.
hanging out in the back, and that's food swimming around in the bottom there.
Yeah. All right, dinner.
But we actually try to keep an alligator in here, and when they get too big, we take them to one of our refuges and release them on protected property. So
How do you get them?
we actually got this one from Arkansas Game and Fish.
Okay.
It was actually a confiscated alligator. So
Someone had a pet they shouldn't have, kind of
yeah,
deal?
yeah.
He was in partnership with the Sheriff's Department and the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission.
Yeah.
They did a drug bust on a meth house, and he was found in the bathtub.
Okay.
So, and we held him for evidence for about a year, and then after that, they released him to us to,
Just a race.
yeah.
Got him in a drug bust. What a story you have.
And you can see you can touch them if you want.
The spines. Oh yeah.
The whole body. They don't have scales.
Yeah.
They have a bony material. They call them scutes, and that's their protection. So they can survive, and they have survived for millions of years. They're very old species.
Yeah.
They swim in the water before the dinosaurs were here.
Yeah.
So they've been around. Paddle fishing like that too.
So are these? I don't know. I'm going to use the wrong terminology, but they're under concern. They're threatened. We have concerns about them.
They're being considered for listing.
Okay, listing.
I don't think the Federal Register. I don't think the Fish and Wildlife Service has determined their status yet. I think they've been proposed for listing, but it hasn't been finalized.
Yeah. So they're just not hitting their life cycles like they need to be.
Yep.
We think.
People are collecting them and killing them, eating them, whatever, and they're not getting them a chance to reproduce.
Yeah.
And they're taking out the big ones, so the good reproducers.
Yeah.
Taking them out, using them as trophies and shells, and
Yeah.
use their all kinds of body parts for different stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, it's illegal in a lot of areas to even do that.
So we're seeing a lot of poaching of these guys.
Yeah.
Not good. Fulton County consists mostly of farmland and wilderness. It's one of the top turkey producers in the state and has an excellent whitetail population. Fulton County has endless, beautiful back roads, which we made sure to take advantage of between stops. Fulton is one of the most rural counties in our district, and people here still talk about the effects of the t-shirt factory that closed decades ago. After waking up on the Spring River, visiting Mammoth Spring, and hanging out at the hatchery, we went over to Salem to visit with as many people as we could out on the square and in the shops. And then it was time to hit the back roads. On the back roads from Sturkey to Camellia, you'll find more cattle than people. We took 20-something miles of gravel roads to get into Baxter County from Sturkey, but it gave me the time I needed to mentally prepare for some of the visits we had ahead.
Step 2 of the OR platform, the Opportunities for Arkansas platform, is to start trying to figure out why is Arkansas the best state in this entire country, and indeed better than a lot of countries altogether, at creating career criminals. That's one thing that we see when we look at our prison statistics, is our recidivism rate is through the roof. During the pandemic, only 4 states actually grew in recidivism, and ours was one of them. So recidivism is a fancy way of just saying you're rearresting somebody if you don't know, but I had to figure that out myself, so no judgment. But basically that's what we're doing. We have a catch and release system in our local jails and our local prison system. After talking to former DOC workers and again reaching in there, any of you that have looked into this, you know that the prison has an incredibly high turnover rate. They cannot keep people employed there. So I went and talked to some of them that I could find that would talk to me and be like, tell me about this. You know, why are you guys quitting, and what issues are you seeing in there, and what can we do? And from them, they say that one of the reasons they're quitting is because it's the same reason that I quit DHS, is that we want to help people and we see an opportunity for improvement, but we're not allowed to do it, or we're being held back by bad policy. So one of the ideas that they gave me that I've done some research on was equipping prisoners for the workforce, which is step 2 of the platform, and that, which actually is awesome because last week, for the first time, this was a release from the Biden administration where prisoners will get access to Pell Grants again. So it's little things like that that we can start to move towards having an education-based response system. But we also have a tremendous amount of workforce development being done right here in North Central Arkansas. If any of you are familiar with the Tech Center heading on back to Mountain Home, we're bringing in trade schools and new programs every week. It's being orchestrated by the same college that I went to, which means access to Pell Grants, access to all these kind of special scholarships to get more people into these trade routes. Well, many of you know we have a demand for a workforce here. We have a demand for those jobs, and the people that I have spoke to, and I believe it's a good pathway, is to create pathways for prisoners to get into these trade schools and to help them with their records so that when they get out, they can actually make a living and become a productive member of society again. What happens too often is they get kicked out on probation, they still got to pay all these fines, And even if they do get a job, they're never really making it. So they're right back where they were when they started going downhill in the first place, which is in a place with no opportunity. So step 3, if that wasn't clear, is we got to make alternate pathways for addicts. And we know that this happens in the teenage years. When we talk to John Montgomery and the sheriff, whether we're talking about the local jail or else we're talking to elected officials or even looking at their own statistics from our local prison population, we know that most of them are in there, even the violent criminals, most of them started with substance abuse somewhere along the way. That is the part where we're losing people, because when they start going down that road, which often is due to a lack of hope, they start going down that road, there's nothing to get them out of that process earlier. Or there's very little, I'll say it that way. There are some things out there. But if you have a child, teenager in your family or in a friend's family that has struggled with addiction or has struggled with substance abuse here, then you know that we're most likely sending them 3 to 5 hours away to hopefully get some hope if they'll accept your insurance and if you can get it covered.
When we got here with the ministry 7 years ago, we were praying like, what does the area need? You know, how can we, not just with the men's and women's, you know, with addiction, we already know that part, but what other services do they need where we can be a blessing and give back and a part of growing the community? And we looked up the stat of suicide, and it's per 100 or whatever, but we're number 1, Baxter County, out of 75 counties, and that's always blown my mind. Like, how is Baxter County number? We got Pulaski County down there, you got Conway County, you got all these bigger counties that have some crazy stuff going on too, and here we are in a small tourism area where suicide is really taking a toll. It's kind of a big deal.
We got to break that chain of drug abuse in rural Arkansas, and we have to have rural rehabilitation centers. We have to have opportunities for our folks who are struggling here to stay here to get the help they need without financial ruin, without long distance travel for the addict and their families, because that part often gets forgotten about, and without the stigma of being treated like a leper.
But in most cases, you have some type of trauma or some type of loss. Maybe it's a family member, a loved one, some tragedy that had happened when they were young, maybe sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, whatever that case may be. And then there's this thing hurting inside that they don't even know that it hurts or why it hurts, or they know that whatever happened was bad, but they're not sure how to make that thing good. And so, but they get introduced to a drug, and all of a sudden it starts to make them feel okay with what had happened, or at least cover up those feelings. And then all of a sudden that turns into a long-term addiction that leads them down a road they've never expected to go down. And then all of a sudden they're involved in criminal activity that they never dreamed of doing. Where they grow up, and the people that have known them and their families and friends have always said, maybe they've seen them as a great kid growing up. We're like, hey, you were respectful, you were always kind to people, but man, years of drugs, and now you've been in and out of prison, for the last 5 years and don't even have your children. That's where it all leads us. But it all stems from some condition of the heart. It's always the beginning of a long-term addiction. In most every case, like I said, small percentage of someone just dabbling around as a kid, wanting to hang out with their buddies, but the rest, there's an issue.
It's been a challenge to articulate some of the personal challenges I've overcome and how they interweave into the campaign. I barely knew my mother outside of her alcohol addiction. Due to this, my parents divorced young, and this was a challenge for my brothers and I. During my younger years, my brother committed suicide in the bedroom next to me. He was 15 and I was 8. Going through these experiences as a child has given me a perspective that you can't really get anywhere else. It's been a long road to overcome some of the challenges I've had in my youth. I know how hard it is to overcome tragedy. I know how exceptionally hard it is to take the first step forward when you're ready and there's no one there to call, especially for our low-income citizens. I saw addiction put my mother in horrible situations. As a child, I've broken up fights between grown men. I've taken care of adults in situations where I shouldn't have had to. Alcoholism took my mother's life at a young age, and at the age of 13, I saw her for the last time. If you're suffering from depression, anxiety, PTSD, or just tremendous loss, please know that I see you, and I know how hard it is.
One thing that just in the court systems alone that we've been like, man, I wish we had a system, because we run into stuff like this. Let's say the courts, they're going to see somebody on some drug charges. We go do a interview at the jail. It goes well. We send a letter to the prosecutor, to the attorney or public defender, and they decide with the judge whether or not this person is a good fit for us, and they allow this person to come to us. Well, we've seen in some cases where a few months in, if it's a lighter charge, they'll drop the charge, and then the guy leaves. So in our eyes, and I know it's a play on things. I know they have pressure to finish something instead of go to prison. But we've always said, like, if you're going to allow them to come to us, we should have something in place legally that says you can't, we're not doing anything with your charge until your 365 days are up, and we can make sure that you meant what you said when you wanted to go complete this program. So there's always been this open end there that's really, not that it always happens, but it's like either this counts or it don't. You know what I mean? And so we're like, we've seen them jump ship at like 9 months because something got thrown out of court. And I'm like, he was just fixing to get a job and start a bank account, do money management, and work on his own, getting his own place. And y'all cut his charges off and act like this was no big deal. Now he's running out in the streets. And I'm thinking you guys prematurely chopped our hand off there. And so that's probably just a technical deal that I've always said, man, if I could ever just sit down and say, hey, there should be something in place that says if this person's released to a long-term rehabilitation program, unless he jumps ship on his own, no court date until this long-term rehabilitation center is done. So why would a judge send them to us for a year but let them off the hook in 3 months? It doesn't even make sense. So it's like they're not fulfilling their commitment, if you will.
Welcome to Baxter County, where there's truly something beautiful in every direction. In spite of some of the statistics that we hear about our suicide rate and about our addiction rate, Baxter County has a lot going for it. It's an incredibly beautiful place that attracts outdoor enthusiasts from all over the globe. With Mountain Home at its center, Baxter County is also blessed with several other communities that draw a lot of visitors to the area. While we do struggle with outdoor access in some regards, our community has also been very forward-thinking in our bike trails and in our city park expansions. The James and Sally Recreational Trail is one of our newest multi-use trail systems in the area, where we also have David's Trail that's continuing and many others in the works. It's a great place to go camping, to visit a state park, to hit a lake or a river, or to explore the James Gaston's Visitor Center, where you can catch up on some of the history of our area. You can't mention Baxter County, or really any county in north central Arkansas, without talking about the excellent fishing opportunities. The real argument comes down to who's got it best, be it those who pursue bass or those who pursue trout, because we have monsters of each.
Step 4. Responsible management of recreational marijuana. I hope that we can do this in a way that incentivizes small business and small farmers. That's my big beef with the way it is now. Is it's kind of a big business measure at the moment, but like I said, I hope we can get in there and have some effect on that, so that we can use the funds from this to hopefully do the things I'm talking about, which is expand the alternate pathways for addicts. And so we can reap some of the benefits of the tax dollars and maybe even create relief in tax in other places. I know everybody loves to tell me, again, wherever Carl, I lost Carl, there he is. Carl's like, everyone loves to tell me what a Democrat is and how much we want to tax people and all that. But There's an opportunity right here to create revenue through a luxury type purchase. Granted, I believe it's a medicine, but we won't go into that too much. But that tax relief from that can help us to offset taxes in other places, which is something that both Republicans and Democrats want to do. And it's something that we can have a healthy discussion about, I believe.
Traveling around north central Arkansas and seeing all the beautiful wilderness really makes you wonder about the history, how people came to be here, how did civilization get started, and what can we learn from it?
What they were really looking for was a fresh place to live and game. And the game here was actually plentiful all the way from Boone County all to Fulton County. The main game they were looking for was deer, and you also had some buffalo, but you also had bear. Arkansas is the bear state, and bear grease and bear fat and bear meat was very important, and it was a tradable commodity. And that's actually how it started out. There was a gentleman actually named Henry Rose Schoolcraft that actually came to this area in 1818, November. Can you imagine November 1818 to the Ozarks? And then he left in February. And during that time, he went through and visited some families. Honestly, some of his commentary on the families was a little bit disparaging on their ethics and everything else. But what he wrote about the area actually enhanced and started drawing people's attention to this area. First of all was the mining for the lead and the zinc here. Secondly was the wilderness and the rivers. We have the White River, we have the Norfolk River, then we have the Buffalo River. He never explored the Buffalo River, but the White River and the Norfolk River were two rivers that he did mention. The White River has heavily impacted this whole region. So the White River is actually the avenue. It's the artery. It's one of the life-giving arteries to this area for immigration. And if you could not make it over through the Ozark Plateau, you're going to come up the White River up to at Liberty, which is today in Norfolk, Arkansas. And from there, it just kind of sprung out. And it just kind of grew up along the Norfolk and the White River. We had keel boats, we had flatboats coming through. Then we eventually started having steamboats bringing commerce up here. That was really good and it helped out, but yet we were a little stranded even after the Civil War till we actually got the railroad coming through here in the early 1900s with the Iron Mountain Railroad. But it was still a very secluded region here. The one thing I do like about the region, you know, it has its disadvantages because it's so remote, but one of the region's really nice qualities that I've always enjoyed was the sense of community and family. And if you did not have that sense of community and family in a region like this and having those associations, you're not going to make it too long. You need neighbors. You need a helping hand. You may not always agree on everything, but when it came down survival and helping each other and feeding and everything else, communities were absolutely, and that sense of community is what actually fostered and brought growth to the Ozarks. Even when all the disadvantages for traveling throughout the Ozarks and the hills and the hollers and the horrible roads and the floods on the river, the community is what actually stitched us all together.
When we left Mountain Home, we went to Rim Shoals and headed south, down to Liberty, Arkansas, or as Vincent likes to call it, Norfolk.
Well, it just happens to be a brilliantly situated town. We sit between two of the world's finest trout streams, no question about it. The Norfolk and the White are world class. We have people from all over the world come here, and we've had world records. And then across the river, we have 117,000 acres of public lands for anybody that wants to hike, hunt, whatever. And so this place is ideal for people that like the outdoors and want to have activities outdoors. The town itself is a beautiful town. It has a lot of historic qualities. Of course, it goes without saying we have the Wolf House. We also have several buildings from the old school complex that was in town. The new school is out of town. And these buildings are on the National Register. And one of the projects I'm trying to help with on the City Council is to get these buildings renovated so that they can be used as city buildings. They sit right on the main highway, and they are spectacular antique buildings. So I'm really looking forward to that. Meanwhile, downtown, the City Council is trying to develop downtown better in an orderly fashion And we have made some big steps here. We have 2 new restaurants. We have a cafe shop. We have a high-end coffee shop for early morning coffee. There's a lot going on here, and there's more coming, I can tell you that. We've got some people wanting permits, and we're on the right trajectory as far as downtown is concerned. Then the other thing that I've been involved in, and I think it's been a real plus, is that we had an old Veterans Memorial right down the road here, and it had been allowed to go into disrepair, and so the city council and I we work together, and it's turned into a fabulous place, and it's an eye stopper, and people come there, and it's what the veterans here want to see. We've started an effort. City council's involved with this too. It's going to take a while, but we're interested in getting biking trails and biking venues. We're blessed with a fantastic bike shop here that really handles just about the whole county, if not more than the county, and has done a real professional job of addressing the needs for bikers. And we're hoping that we can get some particular locations specifically suited for bike riders. Well, we live not far from the Norfolk. I can get up, put my waders on, and walk down to the river through a couple of my neighbors' properties. We can fish 300 days a year if we want. And the fishing's fabulous. The Norfolk is a little over 7 miles long. You put in at the dam in a kayak, you can be down at the other end of the river in an hour. And then the White River, it lends itself more to boating because it's a bigger river, and of course we like to take advantage of that too. And I can take my wife on the boat, and we don't have to go through all the waders and stuff like that. And so we take advantage of what's around here. We also have really good hiking here. For example, on the other side of the river, there's a trailhead. It used to be the end of the Ozark Highland Trail. They've now continued it into Missouri. But you can get on there, and if you want to go all the way to Big Flat, it's 33 miles. I have done that. It's a wonderful place, a beautiful hike, and just locally here, if you go about a mile in, you're way up over the White River, and you can see the farmland and everything. Just things that people don't expect. It's really fantastic.
If you keep heading south, you'll find yourself in Izard County, Arkansas. Izard County is rich with history. Back in Arkansas's territorial days, Izard County covered most of what is north central Arkansas today. Marion, Fulton, and Baxter County were all once part of Izard County. Due to its proximity to the Sycamore National Forest, Izard County is a great jumping-off point for any kind of outdoor adventure you could imagine. Whether it's mountain biking, rock climbing, overlanding, kayaking, or just cycling, you can do just about all of it here. In fact, the Sycamore National Forest is home to some of the most popular mountain biking trails in all of North America. The trails are extremely expansive and can lead to multiple day backpacking trips for those brave enough to take on the adventure. There's also some extremely popular caverns in the area that offer tours. There's no end to the amount of exploration you can do both within Izard County and on its borders. There's a lot of local groups that take great pride in our waters and our trail systems and work hard to keep them clean, accessible, and safe. Calico Rock is one area that is particularly interesting to me. With its rich history and its small little ghost town of Pepper Sauce Alley that they've kept preserved, they've even mounted plaques so that you can read about some of the historical structures. Calico Rock has come a long way in the past couple years due to some revitalization efforts from passionate members of the community. We rejoined with Jake Anderson from Norfolk Adventure Supply on our Izard County Day. Jake is the owner-operator of Norfolk Adventure Supply, and he's very instrumental in working to get volunteer groups together to keep these trails clean and preserved. If you keep heading south out of Izard County and cross the bridge, you'll find yourself in Stone County. But that's not a part of my district, so we'll turn around and come back north. A spent the last 16 years exploring outdoor opportunities in Izard County and the surrounding area. Anytime I could get an opportunity to learn something new and give it a try, I was usually up for it if it didn't involve heights. Izard County just has something special about it. It's one of the few places that really has something for everyone, if you're willing to work for it.
But what we are seeing, for the first time, I feel like, is discussions from both sides of the aisle on what it means to approach this issue of mental health that we have. And so I think right there we can find a way to create some healthy discussion around what would it mean to expand Medicaid to, one, just deal with substance abuse. Let's just give some options for these kids. If they have mental health issues and need to get behavioral health therapy or whatever might be there, let's look at that. We know that the average mass shooter in the United States is 18 years old. When we look at that, and when we look at where substance abuse starts, when we look at the prison and look at where their problems start, it all goes down to the youth, and that's who I feel like that we're really failing in North Central Arkansas is the youth. Profiting off somebody's sickness has always been a very foreign idea to me, but this is the system that we're in, and I think we have to try to fix the system that we're in, because this big overhaul that we've been waiting for before I was born is not happening. But the conversation is turning nationally to where now we're actually seeing bipartisan support for mental health issues. We're seeing Republicans come to the table to talk about that. And I feel like that gives us an opportunity to talk about what it would mean to expand Medicaid in our state specifically for 18 and under. If we can start there, by funding the teenagers that are having problems with mental health issues, that are having problems with substance abuse, I think it gives us the first step in fixing the rest of it. But I think we should start with Medicaid. I think we should start with the teens. But if we're not going to take care of kids, and we're not going to get them what they need, and we're going to turn a blind eye to that, you can rest assured they're going to turn a blind eye to anything that any of us would ever need in terms of health care. As we see later on the chain in the prisons and the jails, you go back to that substance abuse, go back down. It's the kids that we're failing.
But I think we would really benefit from some type of juvenile, not detention center, but a juvenile place to where these kids can go for a season to get some structure and some, so I mean, it's the fatherlessness. It's super crazy, that how many houses are without a father, and you know what that does to a little girl, to a little boy. It's super hard to grab a hold of what they need to grow and be productive in life and have a life, missing an intricate part of the way they were supposed to be raised. And so you got mothers not knowing how to talk to their 12-year-old because the 12-year-old's cussing out the mother because there's no father there to hold the line with his attitude. And then all of a sudden you got this rebellious child that's now on 3 different medications because he needed his daddy in his life. You see, that's a big thing for us, is the fact that you got kids out here that need some structure and what they do is they don't listen to their mama, they don't listen to the teacher, and then they don't listen to the principal, and then the jailer, and the prison guard. They don't listen to nobody. And so you have this lawlessness that takes place because there's no foundation of that father in the home. And we've always seen that to be a big deal. We actually get calls, several of them a year. This year was a little more than last year, about do we have something specific for teenagers during the summertime where they can send their troubled teen to.
Step 6 is to bring integrity back to office by ending the flow of dark money through super PACs and to bring responsible term limits to Arkansas. Try to get this thing back in the middle. One of the reasons I'm running is because we don't ever have candidates on our side. When I looked it up, I'm the first Democrat to run for Senate in this area in 15 years. When you jump over and look at the House of Representatives side, it's been 8 years. So that lack of competition, as we all know, especially even in business, right? The lack of competition erodes the service. It erodes the accountability. When you only have one party that runs to control your entire state government, you get the worst of the worst because all they can do is primary themselves on who's going to sell out the most. Many of you have looked at the language that we often use on the ballots whenever we want to get something passed. For instance, the recent removal of term limits. Things like that I think the General Assembly are doing in bad faith. I don't think that we needed to sit one term out so that we could start all over again, and that's kind of where they sneak that in there. So that's it. I just want to pull the darkness out into the light. That's what I mean by restore integrity to office. Back to term limits, back to transparency. Now, step 7 is to honor teachers and police. So we're having a hard time keeping teachers at all anywhere, but in the rural areas, it's becoming a real problem, a real struggle, and we're in a situation where we're competing with the district next to us for who's going to retain the staff. That's a problem. I'm a big supporter of police. I think most Democrats are supporters of police, contrary to popular opinion out there. And again, I told you guys I was a sales coach. I managed a lot of people. And when you pay a good rate and when you pay people right, you will not have a problem recruiting. Recruiting is always the hardest part of any job, but if you have a fair pay rate and you have good management, you will have an inbox of people to pull from. And that's what I feel like our police departments don't have. And so when we do get bad apples in there, you get bad apples in any organization, it's extremely hard to get them out when you don't have an inbox full of applicants. Good pay rates for our rural areas, thinking about that'll help us. Honor teachers and police. We need to get their pay up. We need to be thinking about the rural schools because, God forbid if Sarah wins the governorship, we may be looking at school consolidation to achieve some of those tax elimination goals. And you don't have to take it from me. There's a lot of Republicans in rural areas that are very worried about their schools because her dad, of course, favored those policies.
Next up on our tour is Marion County. We woke up at the state park, had breakfast in Bull Shoals, and then headed south for little towns like Flippin and Yellville. I was lucky enough to pick up local legend Terry Partee for this part of the tour. Terry's been riding longer than anyone I know, and his stamina and endurance are crazy, making him an extreme challenge to ride with, but a ton of fun too. Terry knows every back road between Bull Shoals and Yellville, and we got to experience some great views because of his guidance. Marion County, like most of the counties in north central Arkansas, is dotted with small farms, small communities, and great small city parks.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
As far as riding the district goes, this route was probably my favorite one. It was mostly paved old roads. There wasn't a lot of traffic on them, and the old farms were just such a beautiful sight. I love coming across little towns like Yellville that have these amazing squares with an incredible amount of history and beautiful buildings and and I was lucky enough in Yaleville to meet a local named Lynn Baker. He's very passionate about Yaleville and has been involved in its growth for a long time. Yaleville is really unique both for its creeks, its proximity to Buffalo River, and also the local festivals that it has.
When I was 18 years old and graduated from high school here at Yaleville Summit, I had no intention of staying here. I wasn't going to let the door hit me in the butt on the way out of town, like so many kids in small town America. But I'm 62 years old and I'm still here. I've traveled a lot, I've seen a lot, but there just isn't any place like home. And I think it's more than home, though. This place has something special about it. I'm not the only one that recognizes that. The people that have moved here that now call it home, they see it that way too.
The last thing on my platform, and the most fun one, is investments in outdoor tourism. I feel like when we look at North Central Arkansas, really the future for us is recognizing what we have here, what we have to enjoy, and realizing how to package it, pitch it, and sell it. And a big part of that comes down to access here, and that's where a state senator, I believe, can come into play. It can be someone to connect these dots a little bit, someone with a mind for this that sees that we can position this thing together and really increase tourism here, which can increase our sales tax revenue. Again, maybe more opportunities to lower some of those other burdensome taxes. But we're doing our Ride the District tour now, so there was three of us for a while that rode from Bull Shoals here today. We've been riding our bikes all around these 5 counties, talking to people, going into every gas station, whatever I can find, these little off-the-road places, hitting our tourist attractions and just trying to win people over. But I bring this up because I want you to know that I don't want to just get in there and vote on legislation. I want to get in there and be a promoter of this area, and I want to promote it like someone who works in advertising would. And thank you. When I look around at, the issues of trying to get the Corps to work together and the city work together and all these different things, is that mainly all they really need is just someone that's willing to go make conversations and to break bread a little bit. Just be a connector. So I'll give you one example and then I'll start to shut this down, but I'll give you one example of how this plays into the mindsets of who you're voting for in this election. I live in Mountain Home now. We were the first city in the state of Arkansas to pass the entertainment district. Our square was half shut down, was not looking good, businesses were not staying there. The Mountain Home Square was not heading in a real great direction. There was a lot of concern. Baxter County in general actually was losing population up until the pandemic. So we had a lot of fears over there, especially when you work in recruiting and you need to get nurses and physicians and these kind of things in. So we had some forward-thinking people that got together, put that entertainment district package together. Boom, boom, we were the first ones to get it done. Our senator voted against it. When you look at the entertainment district and you look at all the business and all the jobs that have come in there and now all the events again that are getting us back together, I can't understand how we can have a senator that says he loves and supports our area and then goes and votes against local jobs. All of these things come together to me to position North Central Arkansas as an outdoor person's paradise here, but I think it's going to take a senator that sees the potential that we have for that.
To finish up our Ride the District tour, all we had left was the eastern part of Boone County. Although I only have a little bit of Boone County, it's just enough that I have Lead Hill, Diamond City, Bergman, and Valley Springs. For this part of the tour, we decided to ride from south to north, so we started in Valley Springs and rode up to Diamond City. This was a very long, challenging ride, and I was grateful that Shannon Baker decided to come along with me. Though Shannon is training for a long-distance race, he kept me on my toes and really challenged me to push myself on this ride. I love doing things like this with people around me that have more experience and have more conditioning than me because they really push me to be better and test my limits.
You got some hills in on that, didn't you?
Yeah, so we went down Dump Road.
Right turn, 80 feet.
The eastern side of Boone is very rural with small towns dotted throughout. You're quickly reminded of its past as a mining town, or a railroad town, or a Civil War town. This is a place rich with history. Though Boone County is known for some of its darker history, a lot of the residents have worked very hard to overcome the stigma of hate and racism. Boone County is just like any other county we've come across, with tons of good people, tons of beautiful views, and outdoor recreation available in every single direction.
That's right.
As the tour comes to a close in eastern Boone County, it gives me a lot of time to reflect about everything I've seen and heard and everyone that I've talked to over this long campaign season. While I am completely new to politics, I'm not completely new to the issues that face the people here. I'm not able yet to put into writing or words what this experience of being a first-time candidate is like. But I hope after November, I can share the experience of what being a freshman senator is like.
30 miles later.
You made it.
I'm grateful for this opportunity to participate in the American experiment. Our greatest asset, our democracy.